Thank you for clicking on the video. Here today, we are talking about my very first voyage into watching Laserdisc content here in my home theater. This is something I have wanted to do for quite a while, for a number of years. And of course, if I was going to venture into watching Laserdisc for the very first time, not only would I want to pick something that's near and dear to my heart, but also a release that really is one of the main reasons why I wanted to pick up a Laserdisc player. It is Alien on the AC-3 LaserDisc that was sourced for audio from the original 6-track magnetic. This is really one of the premier Laserdiscs and reasons why I wanted to get a Laserdisc player here in my home theater. So today, let's talk about Alien one more time. I've done this a bunch, but one more time, we're talking about Alien on the 6-track magnetic release on Laserdisc. So stay tuned. To start this video off, let's do a little bit of housekeeping stuff before I get into the actual AC-3 LaserDisc of Alien and talk about that. First things first, I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. That goes kind of without saying if you've watched any of my content. So I don't want to belabor that point. I'm a huge fan of the Alien franchise. And this specific release of Alien is one of the most sought after releases, for me at least, to watch here in my home theater, because of the 6-track magnetic audio that's on the disc, and I'm going to get to that here in just a minute. So I want people to know I do have an AC-3 LaserDisc player, and I do have an AC-3 demodulator, so I can listen to the actual AC-3 surround sound discs. And that's really the reason I have a LaserDisc player. I don't have DTS capabilities on this LaserDisc player that I currently own. It is a Pioneer CLD D505, which originally was made for karaoke, but it does have AC-3 output, so I can watch AC-3 encoded LaserDisc, but I don't have the capabilities for DTS. But for right now, I am perfectly happy to have just the AC-3 LaserDisc player and demodulator in my setup. The first thing I noticed, at least in my setup, was that I wanted to switch out the video cable. So instead of using the standard yellow composite cable, I used an S-video cable. I tried it out first with the yellow composite, watched a little bit of the Alien LaserDisc, felt that the quality wasn't the greatest, and then swapped it out and put in an S-video cable, and the quality looked just a lot better, in my opinion, at least here in my setup. Your mileage may vary if you have a LaserDisc player in your setup, you know, if you're watching it on a TV, a projector, what kind of TV, what kind of projector, all that stuff is going to play into it, and that probably could be its own video or its own topic of discussion. But at least here in my home theater, I did use an S-video cable as opposed to composite. Now, a few other little settings I did have to change before I actually got fully immersed in viewing the AC-3 Alien LaserDisc was that on my projector, I had to go in and change the aspect ratio from pixel to pixel to what's called letterbox, which basically expanded the image slightly because the image on LaserDisc was made for 4:3 standard televisions, or projectors at the time, I suppose, but standard 4:3 aspect ratio. So even though these discs are widescreen and letterboxed, it's still cropped on the sides. And so what I had to do was go in and click the letterbox setting on my projector to expand the image out. So it went 16:9 ratio, but an expanded vertical height as well. So it didn't look too smushed down and too narrow. It really expanded it open. And the projector I used to watch this on, because I wanted the best immersion quality I could get, was my Sim2 HT5000, my big high budget projector I have here. I skipped out on the Mico and decided to use the HT5000. But that was just a little bit about my setup and everything there. Let's actually get on to the actual Alien AC-3 LaserDisc release. I'm gonna say the reason I picked this up, and I've mentioned this in other videos, was not so much for the picture quality. And even though I swapped over the composite cable for an S-video cable, which I feel did improve the visual quality somewhat here in my setup. The 4K release of this film that I did a video on that'll be linked up here has, in my opinion, far superior clarity and depth to the image, and just the overall visual presentation just looks a lot cleaner and a lot better. Even the Blu-ray release of this film and the 1999 DVD release, which I also talked about, that'll be linked up here as well, that even has a little bit superior image quality, in my opinion, to the Laserdisc. While this isn't terrible, it's not unwatchable. The video quality is probably the lowest on the tier if I was to rank all the releases I own here of this film. I've talked about it in other videos on here, and I'm going to talk about it here again, and it's the main reason why I picked this up, is the audio. This has the original, or as close to the original, 6-track magnetic audio soundtrack on this release that was what was used basically for the 70mm blow-up prints when this film first released back in 1979. So what that means essentially is that this release here is probably, in my opinion, the closest, most authentic surround sound mix for this film that you can get on home media. Now, the Blu-ray version that came out back in like 2010 or whatever it was, and the more recent 4K release that came out back in like 2017, those have a 4.1 audio track that is similar to this. But after watching this here in my home theater and listening to this, those audio tracks still fall short of the dynamics that is on this disc. Despite the fact that this disc is not uncompressed and not like lossless audio like some of the other formats kind of tout in their specifications, this release here is the way to go for sound, because this is the most dynamic release that I have ever heard for this film. Now, the dynamic audio kicks in immediately on this release, and it starts before the film actually starts playing. The AC-3 Dolby Digital intro that is on this disc actually gave me a bit of a jump scare, because I didn't realize how loud I had my volume turned up, and that initial dynamic, authoritative, like, bang to that intro for the AC-3 on here really kind of scared me a little bit. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It kind of gave me a jump scare, like I said, and it has authority and punch immediately. And then after that goes through, you get the original THX opening that everyone knows, the deep note that everyone knows. And it is extremely dynamic on this release, probably more dynamic than a lot of DVD and Blu-ray and 4K releases that may have that on there. And that little, like, whatever it was, 45 seconds or maybe a minute of the AC-3 intro and then the THX deep note immediately hits with authority and puts you right there into the dynamicness of this release. And so that original like 45 seconds or whatever it is really show you the dynamic audio quality that is on Laserdisc and on this release specifically. And it puts you right there and tells you immediately what you're in for. Now, of course, once you get past the little AC-3 intro, you then get into the film. And the film is the most dynamic mix for Alien that I have ever heard here in my home theater. Now, I'm not going to spend an entire video trying to detail every little bit and piece of the film and have this run on forever, but the basic summary I want to give of the audio mix for this release is dynamic. It is extremely dynamic. It is more dynamic than any release I have watched for this film. There is very good directional tonality coming out of the speakers, of hearing little bits and pieces out of the front stage, hearing little bits and pieces coming out of the rear surround. And to be honest, I've heard a lot of noises in this mix that I had never heard in other mixes, and I don't know if that's just due to the nature of this release, or the fact that this 70mm film blow up from that 6-track magnetic uses some alternate audio that is not on the 35mm release, which is probably the basis for most other releases that we have modernly. So some of these audio cues and audio kind of moments and sounds that are in there are just different. Like I said, it's just very dynamic. A lot of bass, a lot of rumble, a lot of high and low pitches with music and sound effects, the creature sounds, the atmospheric sounds. Everything is just so big and so dynamic on this release. And honestly, it shows why this release here is coveted as perhaps being the best audio release for this film. I think that's true. I think this is the best audio version you can get of this film. Now, if you look back at my videos about picking up my high-end DLP projectors that I got from an AVS forum user named Fenceman, he was actually the guy who gave me this. And he gave me this along with a handful of other LaserDiscs, kind of as a surprise. So when I went to go pick up the projectors, he had known about me wanting to get into LaserDisc. And he had a collection of like 1,000 LaserDiscs or something at his house. And he had duplicates of a lot of films. And so one of those films that he gave me, because he knew I was really looking for it, was this release. So he gave me this and a handful of other LaserDiscs for free, just as part of the purchase to pick up all those projectors. There's a few others in that lot that he gave me, because he gave me like 4 or 5, that I'll get to in later content. I'm gonna leave them as a surprise for right now. But this one was probably the biggest one out of that I wanted. And he was so gracious to like surprise me with it. And so I just wanted to mention that here again about Fenceman. I really do appreciate it before I close this video out. Now again, like I said, the video quality, give or take, it's all right. It's definitely watchable. It's serviceable enough. But some of the newer releases of this film just look better visually, even if they have tweaked things a little bit or there's been some cleanup done on it. It does just look better on the more recent, like 4K release especially. But on the audio side, this release here beats them all out, in my opinion. Maybe that's subjective, maybe that's just a fandom kind of thing stepping in there. But for me, it is the best release. So with that, I am going to say goodbye. I'm going to say thank you again to everyone who's watched my content. I really do appreciate it. Definitely leave a comment down below. Let me know if you've watched this LaserDisc version and listened to this 70mm 6-track magnetic audio, or if you're someone who may be lucky enough, either you're old enough or you live somewhere that maybe has a boutique theater. Let me know if you've actually seen the original print of Alien in an actual theater. I would love to do that. That would be another bucket list item for me to get at, kind of down the road. But definitely comment down below. Let me know if you've watched this LaserDisc and, if you've heard this audio mix. And so, like I said, with that, I'm going to say thank you one last time, and I will catch you the next time in the next video right here on Secondhand Home Theater. Thank you.